My name is Alex, and welcome to my presentation. My presentation today is on hearing impairment. So, what is hearing impairment? By definition, hearing impairment is when a person who is not able to hear as well as someone with a normal hearing. So the normal hearing threshold range is -10 to 20 decibels. If you have above that in one ear or in both ears, then you're considered to have hearing loss. So hearing loss is considered a hidden and an invisible disability, and it can affect people. Again, with someone who has one ear, it can affect someone in one ear or in both of their ears. Someone who has hearing loss in one ear, maybe it's moderate hearing loss, and then they have normal hearing in the other ear, they're considered to be hard of hearing. If someone has profound hearing loss in both of their ears, then they're considered to be deaf. So there's 3 different types of hearing loss that I'm going to talk about today, and then I'm going to talk about the 6 different degrees of hearing loss as well. So what does hearing impairment sound like? So sound is measured in decibels, and there is a unit scale that is used from an audiologist to be able to measure what the person can hear from low frequencies all the way up to high frequencies. And so we're going to dive into a little bit to that as well too. So if you look at this picture though, someone who has a normal hearing range, they're going to be in that blue kind of seafoam green level. That's considered normal hearing range. Someone who has profound hearing range, they're going to be in that red, kind of pink, all the way up to purple zone. So, what are the 3 different types of hearing loss? So there's sensorineural hearing loss, which is in the inner ear, and it's when there's damage to your inner ear. And so that's the type of hearing loss that I have in my right ear. There's conductive hearing loss, which is when sound cannot get through the outer or middle ear, and this one is not as common. And then there's mixed hearing loss, which is when it's the sensorial and conductive, so it can be damage to your inner ear, to your middle, or into your outer ear as well too. And that's what I have in my left ear. So there are different degrees of hearing loss. So there's 6 that I had mentioned earlier. There is normal hearing loss, which is someone who can hear all the lows and the high frequency sounds. There's mild hearing loss, and someone who has mild hearing loss might not be able to hear someone whispering. And mild hearing loss is the type of hearing loss that I have in my left ear. There's moderate hearing loss, and so someone might not be able to hear rain falling. There's moderate to severe hearing loss, which someone who has this might not be able to hear normal conversations. It'd be really difficult for them to be able to really pick up on exactly what you're saying. Someone who has severe hearing loss won't be able to hear dogs barking or a car horn go off. I also have I have profound hearing loss in my right ear, and so certain things out of my ear that I can't hear are like helicopters, jets, a running lawnmower, so those really, really loud sounds. So I have this wonderful video. Sadly, it's not going to work within this presentation, just with the video technology that I'm using, but I definitely suggest you guys watching it, and it shows you the different ranges between mild, moderate, severe, and profound hearing loss, and it's just absolutely incredible. So what does hearing impairment look like? This is my hearing test from like over 10 years ago that I took, and so it really shows with my left and my right ear. So if you look at the blue lines, that shows my left ear. So in this hearing test that you see, it shows that my hearing is normal in my left ear. And then if you look at the red triangles, it shows that my hearing is kind of moderate to severe hearing loss in that ear. My hearing has changed over time, and so I do have mild hearing loss now in my left ear, and I have profound hearing loss in my right ear. So, why should we learn about it? Oh gosh, this is definitely one of my most favorite topics. And especially in the classroom as a teacher, I want to be able to support all of my students. And especially if you have a student who is deaf or hard of hearing, there's different modifications, accommodations that are important for you to be able to know, to be able to serve them and be able to provide that inclusive learning environment that we strive so badly to have. And not all hearing loss is the same, and it's really important for parents and for guardians and for teachers just to really understand the different ranges of hearing loss and what we can do to help best support our student who has it. And it's really cool. In this presentation, I'm going to actually tell you the best approaches to be able to communicate with someone who has hearing impairment. So I interviewed my friend for this assignment, and he has hearing impairment. And so he does not like to wear hearing aids. He does not know sign language. He gets really bad anxiety because of his hearing impairment. It came on about 5 years ago. He was anticipating it because it's genetic in his family. His mom has it, his grandma has it, his uncle has it. And so it wasn't a really big shock to him when one day he woke up and there was a really big change in his hearing. And so he has moderate to severe hearing loss in his left ear, and then he has mild hearing loss in his right. And he does predict that he is going to lose his hearing even further. By that point, he says he might end up choosing to wear hearing aids, but they were really hard to adapt for him. And he just felt a lot of anxiety because he was able to hear everything. And he also finds it really hard to communicate in break crowds, which is a really common factor for someone who is deaf or hard of hearing. It can be really hard to hear someone or to be able to have, just to be able to communicate with others. So what causes it? There are so many different things that can cause hearing loss, such as genetic factors, infections, age, earwax. If you're a surfer, I highly suggest getting your ears cleaned out a couple times a year, because then the wax and the sand, they all kind of mesh and build up in your ears, and you can actually end up getting, you won't, not like permanent hearing loss, but your hearing will get muffled. Trauma to the head, such as getting in a car accident, horseback riding accident, any kind of accident. Exposure to loud noises. Our generation, I really find that we always have headphones in our ears, blasting the music in our car. That can actually really cause damage to your ear in the long run. Non-hereditary hearing loss, which is what I have. History of different diseases, drugs, ear surgery, recreational activity. There's so many different ways that hearing loss can happen. It's something that you could be born with, as well as something that could just happen later on in life. So the history. So I really would love to dive into the deaf culture history, but for today, I'm just going to kind of talk about how the education for deaf schools began. So 200 years ago, after the Pilgrims arrived, there was no school still for the deaf. It wasn't until 1817 when Gallaudet and Clerk started the first school for the deaf. And by 1861, there was over 24 schools for the deaf in the United States, which I just think is absolutely incredible. And so by 1884, Gallaudet University, which is this amazing university in Washington, D.C. I got to go visit it when I toured the school when I was 18, because it was a school I was interested in going to. And it's the first school for the deaf. And it's amazing. If you're deaf, hard of hearing, you can attend the school. And sign language is just such a beautiful language that's just incorporated throughout the entire school, which I just love. And so when these schools for the deaf in the 18th and 19th century started to be developed, this really started this whole new development for deaf culture. And I absolutely love deaf culture, and I'm gonna talk too long about it if I do, but if you ever have questions about the deaf culture, how to interact with people who are deaf, I would love to be able to share that with you. So there are 3 different kind of federal laws that I found that protect people who have hearing impairment. There's the Section 505 of the Rehabilitation Act. There's Individuals with Disabilities on Education Act, and the Americans with Disability. So really what this kind of sums up is the accommodations, modifications, and the importance of creating that inclusive environment for someone who has hearing impairment. This goes for someone who is hard of hearing and someone who is deaf. It's really important for us to understand that we want to treat them equally, that they deserve the same education as someone who has hearing. And I will say, it's just really easy accommodations, such as using an FM system in the classroom. My teachers growing up in middle school had one here, and then I had my hearing aid so I could pick up on what they were saying. Having captions on all of your videos, using a qualified interpreter. And it's really important because then these laws that are in place, it helps protect the parents and students who are deaf and hard of hearing as well, and that can have this fully accessible education, which I really enjoyed reading up on all of these laws. And so different innovations for someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, there's hearing aids, and there's also cochlear implants. It's definitely a really huge benefit. I personally don't wear hearing aids. I get a lot of anxiety when I wear them. I just don't like hearing all sounds. I'm actually getting, in a couple of weeks, seeing whether or not I would qualify for a cochlear or hearing aid in my right ear. I've always been told I can't qualify, but considering science has changed, 2019, scientists started looking into the hair hair cells and the damage that causes it and potentially growing them. So that's something that's really exciting for me. If I ever chose to get a cochlear hearing aid, it would be for my right ear, unless my left ear went down a little bit more. If I ended up getting moderate hearing loss in my left ear. So how do you qualify? I don't qualify for hearing loss just because of the threshold level that I'm at. But if you have a hearing loss greater than 35 decibels in both ears, like kind of in like the bed area. So let's say you have profound hearing loss in your right ear, and then you have 35 decibels, so you have moderate hearing loss in this ear, then you would consider, you'd be able to get considered for disability. And so one thing when you're qualifying for hearing impairment is that you have to get an audiological examination. And so this determines the type of level of hearing loss and person in both ears. So there's different types of exams that you can get tested for. It will test the inner, the middle, and the outer ear as well too, as well as the bone. It will test the cochlear. And so these ones are really incredible for someone who's newborn, elementary, older age, the hair cells as well too in your ear. So there's so many different incredible hearing tests that they have. So what is an audiogram test? So an audiogram test, basically it measures the threshold of someone's ear. It goes from the low frequency to the high frequency sounds, as well as soft to loud sounds. So it's just a really cool, and with these tests, they're able to predict what type of hearing loss you have and the degree of hearing loss as well too. So I just love just how science has really had such a really big impact in this area. So the rights and modifications, I did talk a little bit earlier, but some modifications that you can do is preferential seating in the classroom, minimizing background noise, using an FM system, facing the person when speaking, having a qualified interpreter, and using closed captioning on all videos. I personally cannot watch a video without closed captions. And so that's just really important, especially for a teacher. If you're going to be showing a video in class, make sure to have closed captions. If, and this is actually really cool, something to share, if your student does not know how to read, but they do know sign language, you can have closed captioning interpreter video. So it's really cool. You'll have someone signing while you're also watching the video as well too. So that is a new technology that is getting developed as well. And so I actually got to experience that when I was in sign language class, where they showed us the different technologies that can be used in the classroom for someone who has hearing impairment. So how do you communicate with someone? Speak clearly, which means enunciating your words. Raise the volume of your voice, but make sure you don't shout. A lot of people think that you have to be screaming at someone who is deaf or hard of hearing, but you actually don't need to. Most of the time, we rely on reading lips. Be patient and understanding. If you talk really fast, if you have an accent, if you're a lot more quieter with your speech, it can be really hard to be able to pick up on what you're saying. So just make sure that if you speak clearly, just be patient with them and be understanding. They might only pick up maybe 60% of what you're saying, and they're trying to fill in the gap of your conversation. And so just make sure just to not talk too quickly as well too. Reducing background noise around you. I can't have background noise going on in my classroom, like music. Otherwise I will not be able to understand what my students are saying. So let's say, you know that it's really loud inside of a building and you're trying to communicate with someone who is deaf. Just say, hey, let's go outside and we can continue this conversation. Visual cues are really good for teachers to use in the classroom. Always making sure that you have direct eye contact with them, using sign language or different types of hand gestures. If you don't know sign language, you can use hand gestures as well too, and they are able to kind of pick up on what you're saying. Make sure that you face the person directly, use an interpreter, and get their attention before speaking. So one way you can get their attention is that you can tap their shoulder, make sure that they're looking directly at you, and then you can begin speaking to them. Two important things I do want to talk about this with communicating with someone. If someone has an interpreter, make sure that you're looking at the person who is deaf, not their interpreter, when you're communicating with them. I know that it can be uncomfortable or challenging and you're trying to figure out, and a lot of people are deaf, they're going to give you that grace, but for you to know that always look at the person who is deaf or hard of hearing, do not look at their interpreter. And for a teacher, I will say, if you are someone who likes to walk back and forth throughout the classroom, something that's really important for you to understand is that if your student relies on lip reading, it can be really challenging for them to understand and pick up what's going on in the classroom. I find this challenging for myself, and I only have mild hearing loss in one ear, and I do have profound hearing loss, but I still have a really good hearing in my other ear. So if this is something that you do find that you do often, having an interpreter in the classroom can really benefit your student. And so last but not least, I'm going to talk quickly about sign language before I finish this video. I know it's supposed to be 7 minutes, but I love this topic, so it's really hard for me to kind of condense it. So sign language is just a beautiful language. I am proficient in sign language. I was going to do this video in sign language originally, but my video ended up being 30 minutes long, so I had to cut that. But American Sign Language was created between natural sign and then as well as French Sign Language. And so that's how it got formed. There's over 300 different sign language in the entire world. There's different accents, there's different dialects. So I have what's called a Canadian accent in sign language. So this is accent for someone who's deaf or hard of hearing. This is accent for someone who's hearing. So this is Canada. So I have a Canadian accent when I sign because I learned sign language in Canada, although it is considered American Sign Language. Where I'm from the East Coast, there's a certain dialect that's not often found in the Western culture. And so at the end of this video, I do have this really cool fun fact about Coco the gorilla, who was taught American Sign Language, and it's a way that she communicates. And so if you want to watch this video, you can. I just absolutely love it. And thank you so much. These are the references that I used to be able to just support all the facts that I have going on. And so I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to my video, and I hope that you found everything knowledgeable, that you were able to learn more about the deaf culture, learn more about the deaf community, learn the best ways to be able to communicate someone, how you can equip yourself now to be even a better teacher, create that inclusive classroom environment for all of your students.